Well, hey guys, how's it going? We are going to get into these 305 heads here, but first you need to meet a new member of the crew. Now it's true she has a sickly gray pallor and weighs in at probably, I don't know, 400 pounds, 500 pounds, and she can be a bit abrasive, but I think she's beautiful. Anyway, come on, I want you to meet her. So her given name is Susanna, but she likes to go by Sue. This is probably a late 70s, early 80s Sue 680, I believe. It was here in a local shop, and it wasn't being used anymore, I suppose. I noticed it maybe a year and a half ago sitting outside a guy's garage. Finally asked about it not too long ago. I didn't get it for free. I did pay something for it, but it was nowhere near what these things are worth, believe me. You know me by now. You know better than that. Anyway, I didn't know if it was going to work. I went out there before I picked it up, turned everything. Everything seemed almost to move. You know, some stuff I'm still having trouble with. But for the most part, everything works. Took a lot apart, cleaned it, oiled it, put it back together. This thing really deserves to be completely taken apart, gone completely through, repainted and everything. The plastic tray that channels your grinding fluid back, it's all broken on here, so it just, there's a Niagara Falls effect is basically what I'm saying. This one, the hose or the line is pretty well compromised on the backside, and yeah, so I don't know if we'll use that one. The wiring's open back there anyway because the wiring was pulled out. This thing had fallen over when they were moving it or something, and that broke the light. A lot got broken, the door got dented. Yeah, so I've spent a couple days just working on it, cleaning it up. Beautiful cabinet. There was a lot of quick way parts in there, mostly metric stuff, mostly big tractor grinding stones. I was hoping for a quick way or a Sue valve grinder head would be in there tucked away, but it wasn't. So anyway, just thought I'd introduce you. While we're on the subject of valve grinders, I've got this one. This is a Sue 657. I know absolutely nothing about it. I would guess it's quite old, maybe from the 40s. Don't know for sure. It's missing the drive for the chuck, missing the stone dresser. There's its coolant system, little trough there. Everything else seems almost everything else seems to be there. There may be little brackets or accessories or anything like that missing. Everything seems to work okay as far as that goes. The motor just hums when you plug it in, and you know, looking at the cord, you probably don't want to do that anyway. I got a great deal on this as well. It was here in Kansas also, and I think the same day I found it on the internet, ran and got it immediately, and just got a great deal. I would be willing to just pass this on for someone who would actually use it for parts, restore it, find parts for it, you know, whatever. I know how it is. These things are expensive that actually work. They can be expensive in this shape too, but just shoot me an email if you would actually use this in one way or another, and you know, come and get it. I'll give you my address or where you can come pick it up, or if you want to pay for shipping, we haul freight out of where I work all the time. I would gladly throw it on the pallet, wrap it up, and ship it out for you after you pay me, of course, for the price, you know. And if you're halfway across the country from Kansas, easily could cost $100, $150, somewhere along those lines. So just let me know. Well, I'm up to one of my last hurdles on this 327 before we get it running, the bigger hurdles, I should say, and that of course is the cylinder heads. Now in the last video with the intake manifold, I discussed what I was thinking with the heads, and that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to reuse the original 305 heads out of this 86 GMC. Anyway, I had a little bit of concern of using those heads with that little tiny combustion chamber and what I would end up with a compression ratio. If I'm in excess of 10 to 1, then I don't know if I really want to go there, because I'm obviously just going to be driving around using pump gas. So I want to punch all that info into a ratio calculator, and two of the things I need to know is of course the combustion chamber size, to be exact. It's either going to be 53 or 58, and I'm banking that it's 58, being came out of a truck and has the larger valves. But I also need to know the volume of the valve reliefs on these flat top pistons. Can't find any specific information on it, even on Summit or Sealed Power where I got them. Now these are Sealed Power 310 AP 40 over pistons. And like I said, I could find some information in forums discussing this kind of thing, but they were mostly 350 pistons, and numbers that were given were anywhere between 5 and 7 cc's, and I just couldn't bank on the fact that that was accurate at all. Like I said, nowhere could I find information for myself from the manufacturer or from a seller. So I'm going to measure them myself. Now this, when I get to the combustion chamber, I'm going to get a little more professional on it. This is just a good educated guess, basically, is what I'm going to end up with here. Got my block mostly level, side to side, front to back, and I'm going to be just putting, that's windshield washer fluid, just something that's visible. And I've got my little 12 cc syringe here. I've got it set to 10 cc's exactly, or milliliters if you prefer. Obviously, when I check the combustion chamber, I'm going to put plexiglass over the top of it and make sure I have absolutely no air pockets. But this is going to be close enough for figuring this out. And of course you'll lose a little with your front, the notch for the front, but I'm coming out, started at 10, of about 5 1/4 cc's left, so 4 3/4 cc's is what I've used up. So let's go to the cylinder head. Now before I get too carried away with cleaning and machining, I want to check just one chamber and make sure I'm dealing with the size I hope I'm dealing with. You know, if it's, yes, I know you're here, if it's 5 cc smaller, you know, if it's 53 versus 58, then I'm back encroaching on a dangerous compression ratio that I just don't want to get that high. So I'm hoping for 58. I just see very little point in cleaning and disassembling an entire cylinder head without even knowing if I'm going to end up using it or not. So we're going to clean and disassemble one cylinder only. I need to tighten this a little more. Okay, I'm going to put my spark plug in. They're actually the spark plugs I bought for this. Okay, well, this is actually take two. What I've got going on here I didn't like the first time. Now if you're like me, these side projects, extra vehicles, whatever, they're very budget oriented. If a guy needs gaskets, you got to save up before you can get the gaskets. A guy needs tools, you save up before you can get the tools. Or, in this case, you make them. You know, like planing the cylinder head here, probably what I'll do is take a DA sander, clean it up, check it with a machinist straight edge, and if it's not warped, I'm going to run with it. If you have the money, if you want to spend it, absolutely run it to a machine shop and get it trued. But anyway, like I said, I don't want to bother rebuilding these cylinder heads if they're the smaller combustion chamber. I'm hoping and I'm banking on they're 58cc. So if you take these to a machine shop and they check for combustion chamber size, they're going to take a piece of plexiglass like this with a hole in it, set up, I believe it's called a burette, a tall glass tube on a stand, and fill your combustion chamber with a liquid and read how many cc's it took, basically. That cost a couple $100 to buy that setup. So, being's who I am, the cheapskate that I am, $7 piece of 1/4-inch plexiglass off of eBay, $7 100cc syringe, and away we go. And just like checking out the pistons, I've got washer fluid in it. I've got my hole to fill, just 3/16 hole because that's a good size for this tip. And then I used a countersink to put a bevel on it, and then I put a very small hole as a air vent right next to it. I've got my cylinder head a little tilted just slightly, I don't know if you can see the bubble, just slightly towards the spark plug, and I've got the spark plug in it that I'm going to be running. Okay, now I've got 100 cc's of washer fluid in this thing. And if these indeed are the cylinder heads I hope they are, I should end up with 42 cc's left in the syringe. I've also got grease smeared on the valve seat underneath the valves, and obviously you can see it smeared around the combustion chamber to seal the plexiglass to our head. And that's 40. Well, we're a little tilted wrong here. Let me try and put a shim under that. Well, I've done it several times and readjusted things. I'm fighting air pockets a little bit. Still got one right there. I think that's grease. You know, a couple little pockets here and there. I come up with 56 every single time. So I'm pretty sure they're at least supposed to be 58 cc. I don't know. But let's go to compression ratio calculator. I'm going to enter 56 because that's what I come up with, and we'll just see what the compression turns out to be. Okay, so we're going to check out our compression ratio here, and here are the exact pistons I used in the 327, 310 AP, 40 over, and if you look through here, it really doesn't say anything about the reliefs other than it's flat top with 4 valve reliefs. So that is why we measured the cc's of those reliefs. So I'm going to enter my information here. This is 040, 3.25 stroke. Cylinder head volume, I'm going to start with entering the 56 that we got. Effective dome volume, that would be the 4 reliefs, 4.75. Deck clearance, 046. That's just how far the top of the piston is from the deck of the block. Compressed gasket thickness, 041. Usually you look that up, like I could look up Felpro head gaskets and that would tell you on Summit. Okay, and then 8 cylinders. So I'm ended up with a 963 to 1, and I am happy with that. Now just for fun, let's change, say those were indeed 53 cc heads. 9.99, that's getting up there to 10, but not quite, so I'd probably be okay. If they are indeed 8, 942. So we're going to go with it. So for all you young bucks that accidentally stumbled upon this channel and you can't figure out how to get off of it again, this is all the old small blocks used to come with as far as an oil seal, just a little square O-ring that went in the bottom groove, and that would basically, see if I can get 2 of these keepers here. Okay, your spring retainer goes in the top, and then you can see that bottoms out right above that groove. So that would just make oil that's coming down your rocker arm. Try to go through, down through the spring retainer, and it would come up against that O-ring on that bottom groove and back up. And it really wasn't a bad design, because you think about it, that turns the entire spring retainer, the cap, into an umbrella seal. And then GM came along and decided they needed to do more, and so they made actual umbrella seals, and these are positive, what do they call them? Positive force, positive clamp. You know, the intakes clamp down, the exhausts just kind of ride there. And really, you know, that's more conjecture and opinion, but really, these did a great and acceptable job, perfectly fine as long as they lasted. But then, you know, like anything else, eventually these would get hard and brittle too, and they wear out and start smoking. Or the other thing is, if your valve guides get worn out, and so you have more room for oil to slip past and to get into your combustion chamber, these just basically help prevent that longer. Your valve guide's still worn out, but it's not letting as much oil through where this might. So, are the umbrellas any better? Maybe. I don't know. I'm no expert on this subject, but, you know, good guides, good new O-rings, good flexible O-rings, and you're not going to have a problem either. Now this truck was, now these heads from the 305, they were burning oil when I would start it up in the morning, and so soon after I bought the thing, I put all of these on, and you know, these have been used, oh, I'd say at least a good 10 years, and they're still perfectly fine, the O-rings and everything. And in fact, the brand new kits I bought, Felpros SS 72, 52, 6, and 7 exhaust intake, same exact thing. These look like the hard plastic ones instead of the rubber ones. I may even just keep the rubber ones and not use these. Yeah, anyway, it's all good. Having to dress up the end of the stems to get the intakes out, no big deal. I just really want to pull hard going through the guide, and I don't want to gouge everything up. Probably mostly the very end of the stem where it's mushroomed out a little bit. I'm getting there. But I must say, all the valves feel excellent in the guides. Cannot complain. Almost an 80, almost a 40-year-old engine. But the thing was, I don't think it was ever driven very much by the previous owner. I think I put more miles on it than he ever did. Still a little tight. See, this one comes to a stop before I even get to the end. So that would be from the retainer. Mushing it up a little. Well, by the way, it'd be very difficult to show you, I suppose, but there's the play in the guide. Nothing. Nothing. Okay, Suzanne is being a little persnickety, but we're going to deal with her. We're going to get through this. Now the broken plastic tray, yeah, that's just letting the grinding fluid go everywhere. Made a little sheet metal tray to try to get it over there. That didn't work. Still going everywhere. So finally just got a little old aluminum ice cube tray, and if I keep it here, it catches most of it. So I do a valve's worth, this fills up, reservoir empties, the pump starts sucking air, so I got to dump this back in there. Hey, it'll work. Otherwise, working pretty good. That one took a little more to clean up, but we got it and there's plenty of margin left. It's probably also worth noting I'm doing a 44-degree interference angle. The seats, of course, will be 45, and that's just speeds up braking period and forms just a nicer seat. Well, there's a few more snags to work out of the old girl yet, but we'll get them. I was going to chamfer the ends of the valve stem now that I've got them all ground down, but put the little fancy little bracket, 45-degree bracket there to do that, and darned if the valve stem doesn't even come close to the wheel. So I take it the wheel has worn down significantly through the years. Most likely this is the original one. So that's just another little thing I've got to work the bugs out of on this machine. No big deal. We'll go to the belt sander. And I've just drawn a line, 45-degree line on the platform here, and we'll just do a quick buzz on them all, and that'll be good enough. So just really briefly, I've come to the chalkboard to explain for those of us who just don't quite understand or have just never learned what's going on when we grind valve seats and why we want to do at least a 2, if not 3 angle grind. So when your valve, this is the side view of your valve if you're holding it up looking at it, from the factory you've got about a 1/16 of an inch contact between that and the 45 on this cross section of the seat, the ring down in the head. So when you come in and regrind that 45, you have now made your contact area on your valve wider. You don't want that. You want to retain that 1/16 of an inch contact between the two. If you do not retain the 1/16 of an inch seal, roughly speaking, too narrow, the seat is easily going to get beat out of shape and distorted, burned through because it can't remove heat properly. Too wide, it's going to have a tendency to build up carbon, and eventually it won't form a good seat because you've got too much crud between the two. So how do you do that? Well, then you come in with a 15 to 30 degree stone, and you grind that shallow grind on the top, and you try to get it back in line with your contact point there. And as well, you do a 70 to 60, depending on the make of car, the manufacturer, but I would say a typical American V8 would be a 60. 15 is common, 30 is common, 60 to 70, and then of course your 45 in the center. So that's your 3 angles, 3 different grinding stones if you're doing it the traditional grinding method, and then you've retained that original 45 width. Now if you've ground, or your machine shop, or you have new heads or whatever, and it has a 45 on the seat, and you have new valves or someone's ground them for you at 45, then these 2 lines of course will meet, and you can do your lapping. I have done 45 on the seat, 44 on the valve, so my contact point is going to be very, very, very narrow. Right up in here is what I'm looking for. And I won't lap them because I would only be lapping that tiny little hairline. I've done the interference fit, just honestly I've never done it before and I wanted to try it. Also, there's a lot of opinion out there that it seats better, it breaks in better, and as the valve heats up, that actually closes that 1 degree gap and forms a better seal. Not necessary, both ways work. This is just the way I'm doing it today. So I might as well introduce you to another little gadget of mine. This is a Toledo valve seat grinder. Very old machine. Bought it from the same guy that I got the little black Sioux valve grinder from, that I'm willing to pass on. Got both for the same money that he wanted, just the grinder for the grinder. And I've just been looking for an excuse to use it, and this is the project. His grandpa had used it for many years. He was a mechanic, and it had just been sitting in the garage ever since. So he was wanting to pass it on. Came with that cool little all steel toolbox with the drawer, all the pilots. I think I got a reamer. All these grinding stones were in there, of course, all used. Now it works very differently than a normal stone grinding machine in that it actually oscillates. Of course, it's all in one piece. You know, you might be used to the Sioux or the Quick Way version like this, where you put this down on the pilot and then you zap it with the power unit, and then you take this off and look what you did. This operates incredibly different, actually. This thing spins very fast, but then very slowly oscillates inside the circumference of the seat. So only one very small point of the stone is contacting the seat at one time. Now they touted that it was incredibly precise, accurate, and you had almost infinite control. You know, it was up to the operator, of course, but you had a whole lot of control on how much material you were removing from the seat. Whereas this, you put it down, you zap it, you take it back off, you look what you did. And you know, they said it would prevent overheating the seat, it would prevent galling it because material can't get caught in there, things like that. And then you have basically a micrometer feed right here, and I'll show you this when we're grinding. And that just really lets you precisely grind. Of course, it has its own dressing tool. The dressing tool that was on here I actually made. I cut the diamond tip off of this one and welded it onto this thumb screw that was in here because the diamond tip was missing. I got on Beam Equipment's website, BEAM. I really encourage you to go there if you have older equipment doing it the old school way, and I think they have newer stuff too. But I was looking for the dressing tool. These grinding stones are very particular for this machine, so you can't just find them anywhere. You can't get on Goodson, for example, and buy them. They had a set someone had kicking around used for sale, but they look really good. They had that red stand and dressing tool, so I bought all that. The diamond dressing tool alone will cost you $35. I bought that for $60 or $65. So I'll get about double the money, and I get an extra stand and an extra dressing tool because this thing's got a little bit of slop in it, and I think this one has been used much less. So that'll be good. And I should point out that this thing, this way of doing it, pretty much it's all archaic, old school way of doing it anymore. A modern machine shop would be very unlikely to use any of this. They have carbide or high-speed steel cutters that cut a 3-angle valve or a 3-angle seat all at once. But this is great for a restoration shop or a hobbyist who wants to do it himself. So I'm not going to take just a long time on this. At least I'm going to try not to. But I think you guys probably would want to see it. So I'm going to start doing 45s on all the seats. And I'll do all 45s on the exhaust first, so I don't have to change stones. That is one drawback of this grinder design, is that it how long it takes to change the stones, whereas this style you could have several of these arbors and just have all your stones on there. So the first thing I'm going to do is put my 45 for the exhaust size on. And I need to make sure I do not contact the seat. I think I'm okay there, actually. I adjust this pin. Yeah, you can see that. I adjust this pin down with the set screw there so that it is not resting on the seat when it's in an up position. And then up top here I have a compensating handle. I've got to keep my hand in here. This is spring loaded, and it compensates for the offset weight of the motor here being offset from the pilot and the grinding. So if I push here, I'm pushing the weight that direction, basically. So I hold that at the number 1 graduation, and then with this hand I will be lowering the stone down to the seat at the same time. Right now it's all the way up. Okay, I wanted to do a good grind on the 45 initially. Be sure I clean that angle up really well. And you can see I got that. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up the 3 other exhaust ports, and then we will come back with the 60 degree. Now you can see, at least I hope you can, the shiny part here is probably about almost twice as wide as I want it to be. And there again, that's because we've ground down that 45, so it's now longer or wider than we want it to be. So we're going to narrow that back up with our other 2 stones. Now you've heard of Prussian blue. Well, I don't have any, but I do have Bavarian burgundy. So I am actually going to paint that on all the seat faces that I can see, you know, about just half or a third of the face. So when I do my 2 other angles, I can see very easily what I've done. In this case, the red that's left, excuse me, the Bavarian burgundy that's left will be my seat face. It's actually the cheapest red dry erase marker I could find. Speaking of Prussians, I actually am one. Isn't that fascinating? My last name is actually Swedish, so my folks come from northern Germany in the Prussia area, and my last name is Swedish, so I'm sure in days of old there was much raiding and pillaging and so forth going back and forth across the Baltic Sea. And the result is this fine specimen of Prussian manhood you see standing before you. So, you know, I could easily see myself back in the day with a braided blonde mustache and a helmet with horns on it. But I'm sure there was a lot going on back and forth between the Baltic Sea in those days. And at some point, the Swedes of my father's side of the family met up with the Prussians, and here we are. Okay, I'm going to do the 60, and all I'm going to look for, as far as I'm going to go, is for sparks to be going 360 degrees around the seat. I'll see sparks in one spot, that's just where it starts to touch, but I've got to see them all the way around. And basically I'm just barely removing any material at all. Okay, it seemed to take a while, and it's just truing things up. Really didn't remove a whole lot of material. Get this pilot out of the way. Here on the area closest to the camera, that's what took the longest. It just did not want to start sparking there to the very end on that section. But you can see our red plain enough, and see how little I actually removed there. May have removed 32nd of an inch. Not much at all, so I'm going to do the exact same procedure with the 30 on top. Actually, I'm going to do the other 3 with the 60. You don't need to see that. And then I'll bring you back when I do the top and show you what that looks like. So I've just finished my 60 degrees, and I just wanted to show you a comparison of what I'm looking at here. If you can tell, this one, the red is much wider. It may even be over 1/8 of an inch here compared to this one. I had to grind a whole lot more on the 60 here to get it ground all the way around the seat. So this red is narrower. Now of course I'll check it when I grind my 30 degree on top here in a minute. But if this red ends up being less than 1/16 of an inch, then I'll just come back with my 45 like we started with and grind it just a touch more to widen it back out again. No big deal. What would be really cool is to have at least 4 of these pilots, so you could have all 4 in all 4 exhausts per se, and you just go from one to the other, and that would really speed this thing up. But it is what it is. Okay, there's our 30. Looks like we might be just about perfect. Let me remove the pilot here for you. Well, no, it gets, well, I don't know. You see that? Yeah, that's about right on. Got my caliper set to 1/16 of an inch, and that looks really good. Of course, we'll check it with the valve in a minute, but there's what it looks like without the ink on it, and it's just kind of hard to tell what's going on, isn't it? Alright, I'll just show you a comparison here. So these two center ones are looking great right off the bat. Nice, consistent 1/16 of an inch line. So I'm not even going to touch them again. This one, you can see how wide the red is yet. Got just a thin line on the 30 degree on top. And the red is better than a 1/16 of an inch, I would say. So I'm just going to continue grinding till I narrow that up a little, which is the whole point. Let's say my red line was actually too narrow. Then I would just come back with the 45, hit it again really light, and check it again. And that would widen it back out. So I'm going to keep going here. Just having a lot of fun. I love working with these old things. I will do the intakes without you. I mean, this video is going to be quite substantial as it is. And then we will check a few together with the valves. Alrighty then, I've retouched the intakes with the 45. Widen that seat right out again, and it looks great. I mean, it measures right on the money. Very little 30 degree grind necessary to get it there. You can see the line on the bottom end is thicker. And really, these seats were in such good shape, and valves for that matter, it took very little grind to begin with to clean them up, which is really what you want anyway. So yeah, I mean, I could have gone with a 45 degree on the valve and just lapped these, and I bet you $100 I would have been 100% good to go. These were in such good shape. But where's the fun in that? I got to use the old grinder. Cool old tool, worked great. Something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Went ahead and put an interference fit, of course, on the valves, and that meant at that point I couldn't lap them. So to clean these seats up anyway, we're looking at a grind. So there you go. Cool old tool. Good old heads. I guess we'll put her back together. No, we're going to check the valves first. So before we're done, we want to make sure the valve is seating properly in the seat. So we're going to take more of our red here, and we're just going to paint the face of the valve. And I like these dry erase markers as opposed to using Sharpie, let's say, if you're just going to use something from the house. This easily wipes off and seems to actually perform better for this task. So first of all, I'm just going to slam it in there, do it a couple times, see what we come up with. And yeah, I've got a nice hairline all the way around, a little higher up than center. So that's going to be perfect. So there's my line. And just to be on the safe side, doesn't really matter at this point since I just have a hairline anyway. If you had, if you're not running an interference fit, then it makes more sense to spin this, and you can see how wide your seat is. Just confirm that it's going to be a 1/16 of an inch on the face of the valve. That doesn't apply here because of the way I ground these, but I know, judging by my seat and using the ink when I was grinding, that my seat is that wide. The 45 is that wide in the seat. So once we start running this thing and it heats up, this valve is going to expand and it's going to close the rest of the seat up. Alright, we're going to slap this back together real quick. No fuss, no muss. A little oil on the valve guides. I've checked my springs by height. This is a exhaust, so we'll do the plastic one here. Yeah, if you don't have a valve spring compressor tester, another option is to test them by height. You know, probably not very accurate, but it is an option. Get my little oil seal down here in the groove. There we go. Shake them together. Move on to an intake. Protective sleeve. Intake seal. Seat it down. Pull the sleeve off. Looks a little crooked to me. There we go. Spring. A bit more oil. Well, there we go, guys. Got them all prime painted, looking good again. They are ready to bolt back down onto the engine, or onto their new engine, I should say. Now, you might be telling yourself, hey, guy, there is a whole lot more you could have done to these heads in increased horsepower. Well, yeah, maybe. You know, a guy certainly could do a polish, unshroud the valves. Opportunity is endless. Well, first of all, I don't really want to. That's just a lot of tedious time and labor for honestly not that much gain, considering I'm running a stock intake and just a little slightly more aggressive camshaft than stock. You know, from what I understand about it, doing all that work on your heads only starts to improve things when you get more aggressive with your other aspects of your engine, which I am not. Unshrouding the valves, of course, that's going to decrease your compression ratio, and that's just opening up. You know, you put your gasket on here and you see how much material you can remove, or especially around the intake. And I think that really comes into play when you're putting big old, you know, 202 valves in here or something like that. But with these 184s, I don't think I'd gain anything with that. So, you know, this is my engine. I'm having fun with it. I'm doing what I want with it. Don't take this video as something that I'm saying this is what you have to do. And don't leave comments that I am absolutely stupid because this is what I did. This is other than gaskets, bearings, and pistons, everything is free. I have spent no money on this. I have never in my life been in a position where I could just spend as much money as I wanted to make it, never. And I am certainly no 327 expert. I'm not an expert on any of the racing and the performance scene. I mean, I'm a Stowbolt Chevy guy at heart, so anyway, I know that was a long video. I thank you so much for sticking around through the whole thing. It proves one thing: you are over 35 years old because you have a longer than 20-minute attention span. And if you are 35 and under, give yourself a big old pat on the back, because you are an exception to the rule. Now, go work on something like deciphering cursive writing or tying shoelaces, maybe not even getting so easily offended. I just offended you, didn't I? All that to say, thanks a lot for joining me, guys. I really appreciate it. We've got a lot more to do. I'm about ready to get this 327 all together. Just have a lot of the little nut and bolt things to gather together, figure out what I'm going to do, and then we will put it together. I'm rebuilding the carburetor as we speak. Going to go through the transmission, and then we'll slip it back in the truck after the cab is painted. I will bring you along for all of that. I want to say that I know this world looks like it is in an absolute mess, which it is, but God has got this well in hand. He is straightening out a lot of things, and although it doesn't look like it, we cannot see it right now. Believe me, it's happening. And if you're watching the news for what's actually going on, you will not hear it, you will not see it, but stuff is happening, okay? Fear is the enemy of faith. Get rid of that fear. Start putting faith back in God. Stand on the Word. You will be a whole lot happier. The Bible says Jesus will come back for a perfect church. And that certainly is not here yet, but it will be here very soon. So, it's okay. Just hold on. Anyway, thanks a lot for joining me. God bless you guys. We'll see you on the next one.
We suggest that you like and subscribe now.